Donald Trump has given his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron a red carpet welcome at the White House. The U.S. President and First Lady greeted Mr. Macron and his wife, Brigitte, in a ceremonial welcome Tuesday morning which saw nearly 500 U.S. service members from all 5 military branches participate in a review of the troops. The two leaders later held a joint press conference in which they announced progress on a range of issues, including the potential that they could begin negotiating a new Iran nuclear deal that would leave the current one largely intact. 7 hours ago. Welcome to the Independence Live blog. On the second day of Emmanuel Macron's 3-day official state visit to the U.S., the French president and his wife, Brigitte, have been welcomed at the White House by Donald Trump and the First Lady, Melania. The arrival was heavy on pomp, with nearly 500 U.S. service members from all 5 military branches participating in the ceremonial welcome, which includes a review of the troops. 7 hours ago, Donald Trump said the wonderful friendship he has developed with Emmanuel Macron is a testament to two nations' enduring alliance. He thanked the French president for his steadfast partnership in responding to the recent chemical attack in Syria. 7 hours ago, Mr. Trump also sent prayers to the Bush family and wished George H.W. Bush a speedy recovery. The former president has been hospitalized in Houston with an infection days after attending the funeral of his wife, Barbara Bush. Mr. Trump also sent the nation's sympathies to the Canadian people following the horrendous tragedy in Toronto. A driver drove a rented van along a crowded pedestrian walkway in Toronto, killing 10 people and injuring 15 others. Mr. Trump said the nation's hearts are with the grieving families in Canada. 7 hours ago, Emmanuel Macron highlighted the close ties between his nation and the United States. The French president, standing alongside Donald Trump, said, "America represents endless possibilities for my country." He also told the U.S. president, "France shares with your country an ideal of freedom and peace." Mr. Macron touted how the French fought alongside George Washington during the American Revolution, which laid the blueprint for cooperation between the nations. The French president, who enjoys a closer relationship with Mr. Trump than many of his European peers, said France works alongside the U.S. on challenges like terrorism, North Korea and Iran. He is expected to lobby Mr. Trump to maintain the Iran nuclear deal and reconsider the decision to withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement. 7 hours ago, Donald Trump reportedly sent a jokey, handwritten note to French leader Emmanuel Macron, which read, "Yes, Emmanuel, it's true. I love you." 6 hours ago, while Presidents Trump and Macron hold a bilateral meeting in the Oval Office this morning, their wives are headed to the National Gallery of Art. The museum is a short drive from the White House, and sits right on the National Mall. A French reporter snapped this video of Melania Trump and Brigitte Macron arriving at the museum 6 hours ago, while President Emmanuel Macron is expected to push President Donald Trump to stay in the Iran nuclear deal negotiated by his predecessor. Among other agreements like the Paris Climate Accord, the U.S. leader has already signaled his feelings on the issue. Shortly after the two stood on the White House grounds and gave speeches praising the relationship between the U.S. and France, Mr. Trump reiterated his position on the deal, calling it a terrible deal that should have never been made. 6 hours ago, President Donald Trump, while praising his close personal relationship with President Emmanuel Macron, took a quick moment to help his French counterpart out by wiping his suit collar for him. "We do have a very special relationship. In fact, I'll get that little piece of dandruff off. We have to make him perfect. He is perfect," Mr. Trump said, while brushing Mr. Macron's collar and laughing. 6 hours ago, President Donald Trump threatened Iran during an Oval Office meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron, warning the country against restarting its nuclear program. "It won't be so easy for them to restart it. They're not going to be restarting anything. If they restart it, they're going to have big problems, bigger than they ever had before," Mr. Trump said, "and you can mark it down. If they restart their nuclear program, they will have bigger problems than they ever had before." Mr. Macron is expected to lobby Mr. Trump to keep the deal intact, while Mr. Trump has repeatedly called the agreement terrible. 6 hours ago, President Donald Trump, when asked if he might pardon his personal lawyer Michael Cohen, refused to answer. Mr. Cohen, who reportedly paid adult film actress Stormy Daniels $130,000 in 2016, allegedly in exchange for her silence about an affair she says she had with Mr. Trump over a decade ago, recently had his office, home, and hotel room raided by investigators in New York. "Stupid question," Mr. Trump said when asked if he is considering a pardon, glaring at the reporter who asked. 6 hours ago, President Donald Trump, during a bilateral meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron, told reporters in the Oval Office that Iran is behind the world's troubles. "It just seems that no matter where you go, especially in the Middle East, Iran is behind it. Wherever there's trouble, Yemen, Syria, no matter where you have it, Iran is behind it." And now, unfortunately, Russia is getting more and more involved. Mr. Macron is expected to try and convince Mr. Trump to keep the Iran nuclear deal intact, even though the American president has repeatedly said he thinks the deal is terrible. 6 hours ago, here are some photos from the setup for tonight's state dinner to celebrate President Emmanuel Macron's visit to the United States. 5 hours ago, after a morning railing against the Iran nuclear deal, President Donald Trump hinted that side deals could potentially be worked out. Mr. Trump softened his language after a meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron. "We're looking forward to doing something, but it has to be done, and it has to be done strongly," Mr. Trump said during the cabinet room meeting. Mr. Trump and Mr. Macron had spent the morning bragging about their close relationship. The French president is reportedly hoping to lobby Mr. Trump not to destroy the Iran deal. "We're fairly close to understanding each other. Our one-on-one went very well," Mr. Trump said in the cabinet room of the future of the Iran deal. 5 hours ago, President Donald Trump said during a meeting in the cabinet room alongside French President Emmanuel Macron that he would like to meet with North Korea leader Kim Jong-un as soon as possible. "He really has been very open and I think very honorable from everything we are seeing," Mr. Trump said of Mr. Kim. "Now, a lot of promises have been made by North Korea over the years, but they have never been in this position." Mr. Trump said that he would walk away from the talks if they do not seem promising. "We'll see where that will all go," Mr. Trump said. "Unlike past administrations, I will leave the table. But I think we have the chance to do something very special." 5 hours ago, another potentially awkward power move has been spotted online between U.S. President Donald Trump and French President Emmanuel Macron. A video of the two heading inside after remarks on the White House grounds appears to show Mr. Trump yanking Mr. Macron away. 5 hours ago, French President Emmanuel Macron said during a meeting in the White House cabinet room that he had discussed a range of issues with President Donald Trump. Topics ranged from Syria and Iran, to steel and aluminum overcapacity, and the environment. "We discussed the Paris Agreement and our common challenges on the climate," Mr. Macron said. Mr. Trump has promised to pull the United States out of that deal, and Mr. Macron has reportedly been trying to lobby Mr. Trump not to do so. He said their discussions on the matter were very direct and fruitful. 4 hours ago, no comment yet from Mr. Macron if Mr. Trump's famous hair also has a touch of dandruff. The Independent: "It may have been a tiny flake of buttery croissant that had gone astray. Or it may, as the press pool report suggested, been a piece of lint." But Donald Trump was convinced the fleck he spotted on the left shoulder of Emmanuel Macron was a piece of dandruff, pellicule in French, and he felt equally certain he had to remove it, even in front of the whole world. 4 hours ago, here's our columnist David Usborne on the Trump-Macron meeting. 4 hours ago, President Donald Trump said that he plans on bringing American troops in Syria home during a joint press conference with French President Emmanuel Macron. "We're going to be coming home relatively soon," Mr. Trump said, referring to the roughly 2,000 American troops stationed in the area. "Those troops are not deployed in an active duty capacity in the same way that troops have been for past wars in places like Afghanistan and Iraq. Instead, they are working in advisory roles with Syrian defense forces, or providing support for local militias fighting ISIS." Mr. Trump added that bringing those troops back won't mean that anyone forgets the American impact, but we want to leave a strong and lasting footprint, Mr. Trump continued. 4 hours ago, President Donald Trump laid out a pretty simple goal for his upcoming negotiations with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. "I want them to get rid of their nukes," he said during a joint press conference alongside French President Emmanuel Macron. Mr. Macron is on a 3-day official state visit to the U.S., the first in Mr. Trump's presidency. On Monday, the presidents took a helicopter tour of Washington monuments and then went on a trip to the Potomac River home of George Washington for dinner. Aside from the pomp and ceremony, Mr. Trump and Mr. Macron agree on some fundamental issues. One main point of contention is the multinational nuclear deal aimed at restricting Iran's development of nuclear weapons, which Mr. Trump wants to abandon. Mr. Trump ended his first year in office without receiving a foreign leader on his state visit, making him the first president in nearly 100 years to fail to do so. Last July, he was Mr. Macron's guest at the annual Bastille Day military parade in the center of Paris. More about Donald Trump. Emmanuel Macron, White House, United States, France. Reuse content. We use cookies to enhance your visit to our site and to bring you advertisements that might interest you. Read our privacy and cookie policies to find out more.